The international stage has rarely witnessed such a volatile convergence of power, ambition, and defiance as the one unfolding between Burkina Faso's young leader Ibrahim Traoré, former U.S. President Donald Trump, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a moment that has left many global leaders uneasy, Traoré has once again stunned the West by refusing to bow to Netanyahu's 48-hour ultimatum, an ultimatum that had the backing of Washington and was seen as part of a broader effort to reassert Western dominance in Africa. What is happening is more than a clash of personalities. It is a profound shift in global politics where Africa is no longer playing the passive role of recipient of external dictates, but instead positioning itself as a decisive player in shaping the world's new order. When Netanyahu issued his 48-hour demand, it was presented as a non-negotiable line in the sand. His government insisted that Burkina Faso halt its growing cooperation with powers that were considered adversaries of Israel and its Western allies, including a refusal to continue certain strategic agreements with Russia, Iran, and China. In return, Netanyahu promised a vague package of security guarantees, investments, and limited military aid. Yet, as expected, the ultimatum was framed in the language of coercion rather than partnership. Netanyahu believed that pressure, coupled with the implicit backing of Trump's political camp, would force Traoré into submission. But the Burkinabe leader's reply was swift, uncompromising, and deeply unsettling to those who have grown accustomed to Africa's compliance with Western edicts. Traoré declared that no foreign leader, whether in Washington, Tel Aviv, or Paris, had the right to dictate the sovereign choices of his nation. He insisted that Burkina Faso's alliances, whether with Russia for military cooperation, China for infrastructure, or Iran for technology transfers, were decisions made in the interest of the Burkinabe people. What shook the international audience was not only the content of his defiance, but the calm, commanding tone in which he rejected Netanyahu's demands. Unlike the carefully worded diplomatic language that leaders often deploy, Traoré's response cut directly to the point. Burkina Faso was no longer a client state, and Africa would no longer be intimidated by artificial deadlines set in foreign capitals. Trump's role in this unfolding drama adds another layer of complexity. Although no longer holding the formal power of the presidency, Trump's influence on international affairs persists through his network of allies, business dealings, and his ability to sway public opinion across the West. His alignment with Netanyahu's ultimatum was seen as part of a broader attempt to reassert American control over Africa's emerging independence. Trump, long known for framing global relations in transactional terms, saw Burkina Faso's defiance as a direct affront to American prestige and to his own legacy of projecting power onto African states. To him, Traoré's refusal risked emboldening other African leaders to resist U.S. demands, thereby eroding Washington's influence across the continent. But if Trump and Netanyahu expected Traoré to back down, they underestimated both his political will and the broader shifts occurring within Africa. In recent years, the continent has experienced a wave of leaders who are more assertive, younger, and less tied to the legacy of colonial subservience. For them, sovereignty is not just a slogan, but a survival mechanism. Traoré has become a symbol of this new wave, embodying the frustrations of African populations who are tired of seeing their resources extracted, their governments undermined, and their people subjected to endless cycles of dependency. His defiance, therefore, was not simply about Burkina Faso, it was about setting a precedent for Africa as a whole. What made Traoré's response especially significant was how it was received not just in the West, but across Africa and the global South. Leaders from Mali, Niger, and Guinea, who have all faced similar ultimatums and pressures, expressed solidarity with Burkina Faso. Civil society groups and young Africans took to social media, framing Traoré's refusal as a moment of continental pride and a signal that Africa's destiny could no longer be dictated from abroad. In many African capitals, Netanyahu's 48-hour ultimatum was perceived, less as a sign of strength and more as a desperate attempt to maintain influence in a region that is increasingly aligning with non-Western powers. The tension raises broader questions about the future of international alliances. By rejecting Netanyahu's ultimatum, Traore is essentially accelerating Africa's pivot toward a multipolar order. No longer tethered to Western approval, countries like Burkina Faso are pursuing diversified partnerships that prioritize mutual respect and tangible benefits. Russia, China, and even regional players like Turkey have been quick to seize the opportunity, offering deals that challenge Western dominance. This does not mean Africa is trading one dependency for another, but rather that it is positioning itself in a competitive global marketplace where its leaders can negotiate from a place of greater strength. Netanyahu's miscalculation lies in his assumption that deadlines and threats still carry the same weight in Africa as they did during the Cold War or the height of U.S. unipolar dominance. Traore's generation does not fear isolation, nor does it assume that rejecting the West means economic collapse. In fact, many African states have discovered that turning away from Western dictates can unleash domestic innovation and attract investment from alternative partners. By refusing to yield, Traore has not only embarrassed Netanyahu and Trump, but has also exposed the fragility of Western leverage in Africa today. What makes the situation even more precarious is the potential for escalation. With Trump vocally supporting Netanyahu's ultimatum, there is speculation about whether additional sanctions, covert operations, or diplomatic isolation will be deployed against Burkina Faso. Yet such measures could backfire. History has shown that attempts to corner a defiant leader often increase their domestic legitimacy. In Traore's case, any Western retaliation would likely strengthen his standing among Burkinabe citizens, who already view him as a defender of sovereignty against foreign manipulation. Moreover, heavy-handed responses could galvanize regional blocs like ECOWAS or the African Union to close ranks, further diminishing Western influence. The optics of this confrontation are just as critical as the substance. Traore's ability to project confidence in the face of two of the most aggressive political figures in the world, Trump and Netanyahu, reshapes global perceptions of African leadership. For too long, African leaders have been cast as either submissive or irrelevant in international affairs. Traore's stance disrupts that narrative, proving that Africa can produce leaders who not only resist foreign pressure, but also set the terms of engagement. This symbolic power reverberates far beyond Burkina Faso, inspiring movements across the continent to demand more assertive representation on the global stage. At its core, the showdown reveals an undeniable truth. The global balance of power is shifting. The West is no longer the uncontested arbiter of international norms. Africa, long dismissed as a passive participant, is emerging as an arena where new rules are being written. Traore's defiance is a declaration that Africa's leaders will no longer accept being footnotes in someone else's strategy. Instead, they are writing their own chapters, guided by the aspirations of their people rather than the dictates of foreign capitals. As the world watches, the question remains, what comes next? Will Netanyahu and Trump escalate their response, risking a broader confrontation that could draw in regional and global powers? Or will they be forced to acknowledge that Africa has entered a new era where ultimatums carry no weight? The answer will determine not only the fate of Burkina Faso, but also the trajectory of Africa's place in the 21st century order. For now, one thing is clear, Ibrahim Traoré has once again shocked the world by standing firm where others might have capitulated. His defiance of Netanyahu's ultimatum, and by extension Trump's expectations, is not just a momentary act of resistance, it is a signal that Africa's future will be defined on its own terms. And for those who thought that Africa could still be bullied into submission, the message from Ouagadougou is unmistakable. The age of ultimatums is over, and a new era of African sovereignty has begun.